Hello, I'm Darren McGinn. The topic for today comes from questions about the roles in a narcissistic family. Questions include, can those roles change and what are the reasons behind those changes? So the short answer to the first question is yes, they can change. They can be reassigned, even if just temporarily. Sometimes they may evolve over time. Sometimes they can even be rejected. So today I'm going to outline just some of those roles, what those roles mean, and how and why they may change. So if you find this video interesting, please consider subscribing to my channel. So in a narcissistic family, what we often see at the head of the family is a narcissistic parent or parents, known as the matriarch or the patriarch. Or, because narcissistic families often operate like a cult, the grand worshipful master, or she who must be obeyed. But the narcissistic parent often dominates conversations and agendas. They expect unquestioning loyalty and often manipulate the other family members just to meet their needs. This parent can be critical, controlling, and sometimes emotionally distant, but they use their children to boost their own sense of self-esteem, just like narcissistic people do in many of their relationships and interactions. Then there is an enabler, typically, though not always, the other parent, who caters for the other narcissistic parent's needs and demands. Now, they might downplay and ignore the narcissistic behavior. They might make excuses and smooth over conflicts. Now, sometimes they may behave with the best intentions, but it's like they know that if they're miserable, we're all miserable. And when it comes to the children, they too have roles within the family dynamic. Now, sometimes there may only be one child, but typically where there is more than one child, they have different roles. That being said, the kids can have more than one role. But one of those roles is golden child. Now, this is the child that is set apart from the others. They are favored, can often do no wrong in the eyes of the narcissistic parent, until of course they do. But the golden child might internalize a sense of superiority and entitlement and can sometimes dominate and bully their siblings. The scapegoat is the family member who bears the brunt of blame for any issues within the family. They're often held responsible for all of the misery. They're often unfairly criticized, belittled, and even punished for things that are not their fault. And scapegoats often develop low self-esteem and struggle with feelings of unworthiness. Then there is the hero child, and this is a child who tries to excel in many different areas to try to gain the approval of the narcissistic parent and to try to present the family as being normal and well adjusted to the outside world. And this role can lead to high levels of stress and perfectionism as the child constantly tries to seek validation not just for themselves but for the whole family. And lastly, there is the lost child. And the lost child tends to withdraw from the drama and conflict by avoiding attention, tends to focus on solitary activities. And sometimes with the lost child, they may try not to excel themselves in case they outshine the golden child and pay the consequences. But they also don't want to suffer the treatment that the scapegoat receives, so they tend to try to stay hidden in plain sight. And while this role may seem less harmful, it can lead to feelings of isolation and neglect. So there are just some of the roles found in narcissistic families, but why do narcissistic parents assign these roles in the first place? Well, firstly, it's for ego gratification. Narcissistic people tend to see relationships primarily as a means to fulfill their own needs rather than as mutually supportive connections. And assigning roles helps them to ensure that the people in their lives are constantly working to meet their needs, whether it's emotional support, admiration, or validation. Narcissistic parents also tend to live vicariously through their children. Perfect parents have perfect children, so they get a sense of validation when others mention how clever or well behaved their kids are. Secondly, assigning roles to others allows narcissistic people to manipulate and exert control over their relationships. By designating who should play what role, they manipulate the dynamics of those around them to suit their own desires and to maintain dominance. Assigning roles can also create divisions and conflicts among others, and some narcissists do thrive on the division, especially as it seems to keep people focused on each other rather than on their behavior and their shortcomings. And division can also make it difficult for others to unite against narcissistic people. They also tend to feed off others competing for their affection. By giving roles to others, narcissistic people also are able to deflect blame for their own actions onto others. As I said earlier, they may blame the scapegoat for all of the family's problems, even when the issues are caused by their own behavior. Lastly, regardless of what goes on behind closed doors, narcissistic people are often highly concerned about how they appear to others. Image is everything. And assigning roles can help them create an image of a functional family. So, some of the ways in which these roles can shift in a narcissistic family can include, firstly, whenever they start projecting blame. Now, as I said a moment ago, usually when something goes wrong within the family, they project the blame onto a convenient target, and this is usually the scapegoat. However, any of the children, even the partner, can quickly become scapegoated if the narcissistic parent blames any perceived shortcomings or failures onto them. Now, maybe the scapegoat child isn't around at the moment, so the parent just blames whoever is nearest. Another shift can happen when maybe the golden child has failed at something or maybe brought some kind of shame to the parent. So the role goes from one of favor to disfavor. Another child is now given preferential treatment, sometimes to make a point. So the golden child loses their crown. And this creates jealousy as their sense of superiority and entitlement is undermined and can find themselves now in the role of scapegoat until they learn to succeed or to comply again. Another reason for a change could be if one of the children, as they grow, maybe they begin to show a certain talent, a certain skill for something, and that starts to bring them positive regard from others outside of the family. So the role of golden child can switch to them as the parent now basks in their success. Now, some of these switches can be temporary, they could be for a moment, for a season, but the inconsistent positive and negative mixed messages can be emotionally disorientating for the children. Now, another reason for a shift or a change in roles can be a major life event. Now, this could be a divorce, financial struggles, or perhaps the introduction of new family members. But some of these events can disrupt the already established family dynamics and may prompt the narcissistic parent to reshuffle those roles within the family as they navigate those changes. For instance, a previously favored child might find themselves now in the enabler's role, or an otherwise ignored child might suddenly find themselves in the scapegoat role. And lastly, the roles can change because people change. Children aren't children forever. As the kids grow older, one of them might move away from home, but this still leaves the other siblings behind. And this can lead to shifts in the power dynamics and create temporary confusion within the family home. And now, many people raised in narcissistic families often continue those roles into their adult relationships, but not all of them, and not always forever. There are always exceptions. As the children begin to grow up, they grow older and start to develop their own identities. They may challenge or resist those roles that were assigned to them. As they start to form other relationships outside of the family, they might maybe seek therapy or support, which can lead to an increased awareness of those unhealthy patterns. So, a scapegoat child might confront the family about the unfair treatment. The lost child might find their voice, and the hero child might one day realize it's not up to me to fix this. Even a golden child might one day just reject the pressure to conform. So, in conclusion, those with deeply ingrained narcissistic traits often assign roles to others as a way to maintain control, gratify their ego, and to manipulate those around them just to ensure that their emotional needs are met. And these roles can have detrimental effects on the well being of those who are sometimes forced into them. And there are different reasons why narcissistic parents can switch and change those roles sometimes, but sometimes maybe it just comes down to whatever mood they happen to be in. The children, however, may carry those roles into their adult lives, and it impacts their self esteem, their relationships, and their overall well being. However, breaking free from these roles is possible. Things like developing healthy relationships, engaging in therapy, support groups, and building self awareness can be helpful. And healing can take time, but it is possible. So that's a brief outline of some of the roles in a narcissistic family and how they can change, sometimes for a brief moment, or how they can change over time. I have made videos previously on the different roles within a narcissistic family if there's anything there you might find interesting. But as always, if there's anything you'd like to add, anything I may have missed, please feel free to use the comment box below. There are some interesting conversations start from these videos. But if you find this interesting, please consider subscribing to my channel, and until next time, thanks for watching.